long ago, long ago, long ago. Yes, the old account was settled long ago. And my record's clear today, 'cause it washed my sins away. And the old account was settled long ago. Now the old account was large and growing every day, 'cause I was always sinning and I never tried to pray. Then I looked ahead and saw such pain and woe, so I went up to the keeper and I settled it long ago, long ago, long ago. Yes, the old account was settled long ago. Now and my record's clear today, 'cause it washed my sins away. And the old account was settled long ago. Well, now sinners seek the Lord and repent of all your sins, 'cause this He has commanded if you would enter in. And then if you should live 100 years below, well, you know you got it settled when you settled it long ago, long ago, long ago. Yes, the old account was settled long ago. And my record's clear today, 'cause it washed my sins away. And the old account was settled long ago. Yes, the old account was settled long ago.
Daniel chapter 2, verses 25 through 30. Then Arioch, the captain of the king's guard, brought Daniel into the king's presence and spoke to him as follows: I have found a man among the exiles from Judah who can interpret the dream for the king. And the king said to Daniel, though calling him by his Babylonian name, Belteshazzar, are you able to reveal to me my dream as well as its interpretation? And Daniel said before the king, as for the mystery about which the king has inquired, no magi, no conjurers, no diviners, no wizards are able to declare that before the king, but there is a God in heaven who reveals mysteries. It is this God who is making known to King Nebuchadnezzar what will take place in the future. This was your dream. This was the vision which was in your mind when you were on your bed. As for you, O king, there on your bed, your thoughts turn to what would take place in the future. And the one who reveals mysteries has made known to you what that will be. Now, as for me, this mystery has not been revealed to me because of any wisdom which I have, any more than any other wise man, but rather so that I might make that interpretation known to you, O king, and so that you might understand what you were seeing.
Is sinking fast. My race is nearly run. The strongest triumph now are past. Triumph has begun. behold, they come. I hear the sound of wings. Oh, come, angel band, come and around me stand. Oh, bear me away on your snow white wings. My immortal home. Oh, bear me away on your snow white wings. My immortal home. Fall behind, Fall behind. Whoa, bear me away on your snow white wings. My immortal home. Oh, bear me away on your snow white wings to my immortal
So this is the Book of Daniel. Book of Daniel is written. This is one of those books where the scholars can kind of nail it down pretty good. About 166 BC. It's because it's actually concerned about something that was going on in Jerusalem during that time under the reign of a guy named Antiochus IV, who went by the name Epiphanes. And so it has a very specific purpose. It is in two parts. The second part are a series of visions in the spirit of Daniel. So that part is what is known from a literature style perspective. It's called Apocalypse. And the other part, the first part, you might call those the legend of Daniel and his three friends. Now, I use that word legend on purpose because legend is a complex concept. So let's think about something like the legends of King Arthur. If you thought about that story, the legends of King Arthur, then the character who would be Daniel is Merlin. Daniel's the Merlin character. There's probably an historical person behind the legends of King Arthur, some king who is the prototype that the Arthurian legends kind of develop out of. And so, but the stories themselves probably don't have a lot of historical basis, the legends of King Arthur, other than maybe there was an origin story that kind of gave rise to it. Now, on the other hand, if I say the legends of Wyatt Earp. Now, Wyatt Earp, we got pictures of Wyatt Earp. There's film of Wyatt Earp because he lived into the early part of the 20th century. He actually consulted on some early Westerns in the movie business. There's accounts written by Wyatt Earp, as well as, now I should say that some of his accounts may be a little bit self-serving because, he did understand that was his legend was actually his income. So, and then there were stories written about Wyatt Earp, which may or may not have any basis in fact whatsoever. And so to this day, historians still are like trying to piece together what happened at the OK Corral. And yet we all know because we saw the movie. So there's historical basis, some historical truth, but then there's maybe some embellishment. The stories of Daniel, the legends of Daniel, are about a guy who is described as having lived in the time of King Nebuchadnezzar. That would put him, and it's right at the time of the first portion of the exile, the defeat of Jerusalem and in Judah, but before the destruction of the temple. So that would put us about 596, 595 BC. And then Daniel is, according to the legendary stories, Daniel is working in the court of successive kings down to the king Cyrus of Persia, which would be down to the mid 530 BC. So he has about a 60-year career. By the way, I should tell you, Nebuchadnezzar, that's probably a Hebrew dig. Nabu is the name of a deity. And the king's actual name is something more like Nabu Hadneru. Hadnezzar would see, because Nebuchadnezzar would mean something like, Nabu, watch over this jackass. They did that. There was a comment. Jewish scribes would sneak that stuff in. Yeah, you don't see, and yeah, they would do that. So there was possibly a little dig going on there. So I don't know, and I don't think anyone can say what about whatever historical stuff with these stories, with these legends, how much, how little. So I don't care, because I'm interested in their use, their function, and their function is midrash. Now, midrash is a term used particularly in Hebrew theology. It is similar to the word parable. It's a story, and it's a story that has predominantly two functions. It teaches a theological truth by way of story rather than by way of lecture, and it also reveals something about how to live. So it's how to live practically in the world and something about the nature of God. So that's what midrash is, and there's a ton of midrashic stories. These are here in the Bible, and that's what their function is. And so I'm going to treat them like midrash. I'm going to tell you the stories and tell you what the lessons are. And the story of Daniel and his three friends. Daniel and his three friends are in 596 BC, when Nebuchadnezzar defeats Judah. He exports with him the cream of the crop, the brightest and the best, including a bunch of young guys who have a good future. This includes Daniel and his friend. They are put in charge of a guy whose sole purpose is he's given 3 years to educate them and train them up so they can serve in the king's court. The first thing that happens, because the king wants them to do well, the king makes sure that they have access to the same kind of food the king eats. And when Daniel and his friends see this food, Daniel's like, we can't eat that. It's probably not kosher. And so Daniel says to the guy in charge, he says, let us not eat that. Just give us vegetables and water instead, because we can't eat that. And the guy in charge is like, you're trying to get me killed? And Daniel says, how about this? Let us do this for 10 days and then compare how we look with everyone else. Well, it turns out everyone else was eating the king's food, which was basically McDonald's and KFC, and lots of carbs and lots of fats and lots of sugar. And so at the end of the 10-day period, they were all like sluggish and slow, whereas Daniel and his friends, who were eating like vegetarians, they looked good. Their skin was shiny and their eyes were bright. And so the guy in charge went, okay, you can keep eating that way. And so they are doing very well. They get through their training period. They do really well. The people in sort of the mid-level management know them and think they're pretty cool. They know they're weird, but they think they're pretty cool. And then one day the king has a dream. Do you ever have one of those dreams you wake up in the morning and you go, man, that was a weird dream, and then you can't remember it? But you have the emotional reaction to it is still in you for maybe all day, but you can't remember anything like the details of the dream, and it starts to make you a little nuts. That's what happened to Nebuchadnezzar. He had a dream, and it really bothered him. It really resonated somewhere in here, but he couldn't remember the details. So he calls a bunch of the Magi, and he says, tell me my dream and my interpretation. And the Magi said, sure, we can do that. What's the dream? And the king says, no, you don't understand. Tell me the dream and the interpretation. And they look at him and they go, that's not how this works. It works like this. You tell us the dream, we tell you what it means. And the king says, no, you have to tell me what the dream is, and then you can tell me what it means. And the magicians go, what are we, psychic? Keep waiting for people to get that. We can't do that. No one can do that. And the king is kind of upset. He says, what use are you guys? I'm going to have you all executed. So he gives orders to have all of those who are in that category. So the magi, the wise, the ones who are considered wisdom, experts in wisdom, all of them are to be wiped out. And this, by the way, includes Daniel and his friends. And Daniel is, obviously, they don't want to die. So Daniel sees an opportunity not only to save his own life, but to save the lives of all those other fortune tellers, wizards, magi. And so he says to the captain of the guard, who's been given the job of killing everyone, he actually seems a little reluctant to do so. He says to the captain, "What's your hurry? Give us a few days to inquire of our God and to see if this can be revealed to us. And if it doesn't work, then you can kill everybody." So I love how Daniel keeps doing this. He says, give us this amount of time, and if it doesn't work, right? Give us this much time, and if it doesn't work. So Daniel gets his friends together, they fast, they pray, they ask God, and God reveals to Daniel the king's dream and its meaning. And the word is sent to the king, and the captain of the guard comes in and says, "I found a guy from Judah who can tell you what your dream is and what it means." And he introduces Daniel, only he introduces Daniel by his Babylonian name, Belteshazzar. And Daniel comes in and says, and the king is like, "Oh, you can tell me what the dream is?" And Daniel's like, "No one can do that, O king. I just want you to know that up front. You're not really being fair to all these people you were talking about killing. But there is a God in heaven who is willing sometimes to reveal these mysteries, and in this case has revealed it to me, not because I'm special, not because I'm wiser than any of the other guys you were thinking about killing, but just because that's my God. And my God has revealed it to me that I might tell it to you so that you might know what's going on." You're going to have to tune in next week for the dream. That's a different sermon altogether. So here's this really interesting, fun, great story that already you can see in there, like life lessons. Let's try it and see. Give us some time to see if we can solve this problem. Things like that, like practical ways of dealing with people. Willingness to take responsibility, but also, let's be reasonable. There's a wonderful, wonderful pieces in there. There's also a willingness on the part of Daniel and his friends to be strangers and outcasts, to be the weirdos. Right? To be the weirdos. The ones who aren't eating the same food as everyone else. The ones who aren't dressing like everyone else. The ones who aren't operating like everyone else. To be the strange ones, a little bit on the fringes. And I think that's kind of important for us to capture. Because we tend to think of, especially in our culture, we think of America as, a Christian nation. No, wasn't ever supposed to be. It was supposed to be a nation where you could be whatever religion you wanted to be. But there's this tendency among Christians who are like, we need to do it, It's how I was describing this to a friend just the other day. I said, there's a lot of people who not only want to have their way, but they want everyone else to have their way. Right? I want it my way, but I want you to have it my way too. Right? There's a lot of people like that. And so when you live in the culture, and the culture is defined by the religion, that's kind of how that works. A group of people get to say, we want it my way, and everyone's going to do it that way because our God says so. But what happens when you live in exile? And this is a story of living in exile. And I think that might be the best model for us as Christians living in this world, is stop thinking of ourselves as, we live in a Christian nation, but think of ourselves as living in exile, like Daniel. And when we do that, that means we're outcasts and we're weirdos, and we should look different and act different and sound different and be different. And people should notice that. And when they comment on that, like, how come? It's not, well, I'm great, that's why. I'm special. I'm quirky. It's not that. What does Daniel say when asked how come he got the dream? He says, it's nothing about me. I'm not special, he says. Not any more special than any of these other people. It's just that I serve a God who's special. Do you understand? In other words, if you look at how Daniel's living his life, he's living as a weirdo, as a stranger, as the peculiar odd duck in the midst. But at the same time, he's living his life in such a way that he is a blessing and he is a witness. And these two things are almost inseparable. He does not try to convince the king of Babylon that the Babylonian or the king should become, a worshiper of Daniel's God. He just bears witness to the fact that there is a God and that God is Daniel's God. And that's a pretty powerful thing, to stand as the stranger, as the oddball, to be like, to quote a line from Abraham, to be the stranger in a strange land who lives a different kind of life among everyone else. Can you find the prayer response? And let's pray that together. I feel estranged, out of place in this world. I am an alien and exile living in a foreign land, waiting for my true home to appear. But you have exiled me here for your own purposes, O Lord. You have set me as an outcast, so I might be a blessing to others and a witness that you are the one true God. And my service as witness and blessing occurs precisely in those moments when I am most estranged, most out of place. So keep me as your awkward one, as your misfit, that I might be effective in my service. In Jesus' name, amen.
When peace like a river attendeth my way, when sorrows like sea billows roll, whatever my lot, thou hast taught me to say, it is well with my soul.
You
Mothers, don't you stop a praying. Fathers, keep right on praying. Mothers, don't you stop a praying. You know this whole world is almost done. Now keep your lamps trimmed and burning. Keep your lamps trimmed and burning. Keep your lamps trimmed and burning. For this whole world is almost done. Sisters, don't you stop a serving. Brothers, keep right on serving. Sisters, don't you stop a serving. You know this whole world is almost done. Now keep your lamps trimmed and burning. Keep your lamps trimmed and burning. Keep your lamps trimmed and burning. For this whole world is almost done. Christians, don't you stop a shining. Christians, keep right on shining. Christians, don't you stop a shining. You know this whole world is almost done. Now keep your lamps trimmed and burning. Keep your lamps trimmed and burning. Keep your lamps trimmed and burning. For this whole world is almost done. Yeah, keep your lamps trimmed and burning. Keep your lamps trimmed and burning. Keep your lamps trimmed and burning. For this whole world is almost done. Yeah, for this whole world is almost done. For this whole world is almost done. May the Lord bless